My name is Clarabelle. I'm 32 years old now, and for most of my life, I believed that family was everything. I thought that no matter how hard things got, blood was supposed to be thicker than water. I spent years trying to earn a place at their table, trying to prove I was worth their love. But one Christmas morning 3 years ago, I learned exactly what I was worth to them. $2, that's it. While my sister unwrapped the keys to a brand new BMW, I got a single $2 bill in an envelope. No card, no explanation, just $2. And at 2 in the morning, I made a decision that changed everything. Before I share what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, because this story is for you. I grew up in Connecticut in what most people would call a comfortable home. My father, Richard, was a successful attorney who worked at a prestigious firm downtown. My mother, Diane, ran her own dental practice in the suburbs. We lived in a beautiful colonial house with a manicured lawn, the kind of place that looked perfect from the outside. And for a long time, I thought maybe it was perfect. I just wasn't the right fit for that perfection. My older sister Haley was born 3 years before me, and from the moment I was old enough to understand, I knew she was different, special. She had golden blonde hair that fell in perfect waves, bright blue eyes that sparkled when she smiled, and she was tall and graceful like our mother. I, on the other hand, took after my father with my dark brown hair, average height, and what my mother used to call an unremarkable face. I wasn't ugly, but I wasn't the kind of beautiful that turned heads. Haley was. The differences started small when we were children. Haley got piano lessons at an expensive music academy in the city. I got a used keyboard from a garage sale and a book on teaching yourself. Haley took ballet at an elite studio where girls trained for professional careers. I took a community center class that met once a week in a church basement. When Haley wanted to join the tennis club, my parents paid the $5,000 membership fee without blinking. When I asked if I could take art classes at the local college, I was told we needed to be more careful with money. Birthdays were another story entirely. Haley's celebrations were elaborate affairs with themes professional decorators and guest lists that included half her school. There would be a DJ, a cake from the most expensive bakery in town, and gifts that filled an entire room. My birthdays were quiet family dinners at home with a store-bought cake and maybe one or two presents. When I turned 13 and asked if I could have a party with my friends, my mother sighed and said that big parties were wasteful and that I should be grateful for what I had. But I tried to be grateful. I really did. I told myself that maybe I just needed to work harder, be better, achieve more. So I threw myself into school. I studied every night, joined every club that didn't cost money, and volunteered at the local library every weekend. I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and got accepted to the University of Massachusetts with a partial scholarship. I was so proud. I thought finally they would see me. The day I told my parents about my acceptance, my father looked up from his newspaper and said, "That's nice, Clarabelle. Haley just got her acceptance to Yale." And just like that, my achievement became a footnote to hers. Yale was Ivy League. Yale was prestigious. The University of Massachusetts was just a state school. Never mind that Haley's grades were mediocre and she got in because my father knew someone on the admissions board. Never mind that I had earned my place through hard work. It didn't matter. My parents paid for everything for Haley. Full tuition room and board, a new car for her 18th birthday, a laptop, spending money. For me, they covered what my scholarship didn't with a loan in my name that I would have to pay back. I worked 3 part-time jobs during college to afford books and food. Haley pledged a sorority and spent her weekends at parties. After graduation, I moved to Boston and started working in marketing for a small firm. The pay wasn't great, but I was independent. I had my own tiny apartment, paid my own bills, and slowly started paying down my student loans. Haley moved to New York to work in finance, but the truth was she barely kept her job. My parents paid her rent for a luxury apartment in Manhattan, helped her with her expenses, and used their connections to make sure she kept getting promoted despite her poor performance. Every year, I would save up money from my already tight budget to buy Christmas gifts for my family. I would spend hours trying to find the perfect presents, things they would actually like and use. I wanted them to know I was thinking of them, that I cared, that I was still trying to be part of the family. Every year I would drive the 3 hours from Boston to Connecticut for Christmas, hoping that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they would see me, really see me, and realize that I was worth loving too. I held on to that hope for 28 years. I was wrong. That December 3 years ago started like any other. My mother called me 2 weeks before Christmas and invited me home for the holidays. Her voice had an unusual brightness to it when she said, "This year will be special, Clarabelle. We have big surprises planned." My heart jumped. Big surprises. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally going to acknowledge me. Maybe they had realized how hard I had been working, how much I had been trying. Maybe this was the year things would change. I started planning immediately. I had been saving money for months, putting aside a little from each paycheck for Christmas gifts. I wanted to give them something meaningful, something that showed how much I still cared despite everything. For my father, I bought an Italian silk tie from a boutique in Boston. It was deep burgundy with a subtle pattern, exactly the kind of thing he wore to court. It cost me $200, which was more than I usually spend on groceries in a month, but I wanted him to have something truly nice. For my mother, I found a set of her favorite perfume at a department store. It was a French brand she had mentioned loving years ago, but said was too expensive to buy regularly. The set included the perfume lotion and body wash. $150. I added it to my cart without hesitation. For Haley, I chose a small designer handbag she had mentioned wanting when we talked on the phone a few months earlier. It wasn't one of the huge expensive ones, but it was authentic and from a brand she liked. $300. I winced when I swiped my card, but I told myself it would be worth it. Maybe she would finally appreciate something I gave her. In total, I spent $650 on gifts. That was nearly half of what I had managed to save over the past 6 months. But family was supposed to be worth it, right? That's what I kept telling myself as I carefully wrapped each present and loaded them into my car. On December 23rd, I made the drive from Boston to Connecticut. It took just under 3 hours, and I spent the entire time feeling a strange mixture of excitement and anxiety. When I pulled up to the house, I noticed Haley's car was already there, along with another vehicle I didn't recognize, a sleek black Mercedes. I grabbed my overnight bag and the presents and walked up to the front door. Before I could even knock, the door swung open, and Haley stood there with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Clarabelle," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "You made it." Inside, the house smelled like pine and cinnamon. The Christmas tree in the living room was massive and decorated with what looked like all new ornaments. Everything was white and silver and gold, perfectly coordinated like something from a magazine. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, Clarabelle, good. You're here. Come meet Preston." Preston turned out to be Haley's new boyfriend, a man in his early 30s wearing an expensive watch and a sweater that probably cost more than my rent. He worked on Wall Street, Haley explained, in investment banking. He shook my hand with a firm grip and a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. That evening, we had dinner together around the dining room table. My father opened a bottle of wine that he said cost $300, though he poured me the smallest glass. The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. They talked about Preston's work, about the deals he was closing, about the bonus he was expecting. They talked about Haley's apartment, about the renovations she was planning, about a vacation to the Maldives they were considering. When Preston asked what I did for work, I told him I was in marketing in Boston. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Oh, that's quaint. Not exactly high stakes like finance, though, is it?" My parents laughed. Not in a mean way exactly, but they laughed. No one defended me. No one said that marketing was valuable, or that my work mattered. They just laughed and moved on to another topic. After dinner, I excused myself and went upstairs to my old bedroom. Except it wasn't really my bedroom anymore. It had been converted into a guest room years ago with neutral colors and generic furniture. All my old posters, my books, my things were gone. Meanwhile, Haley's room had been transformed into a sitting room with plush furniture and decorative pillows. Even in their house, even in the space that was supposed to be mine, I had been erased. I lay on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of conversation and laughter from downstairs. At some point, I heard my parents and Haley talking in the hallway. My mother's voice carried through the door. Tomorrow is going to be so exciting. The car is absolutely perfect. My father responded. She's going to be thrilled. We really outdid ourselves this year. I felt a flutter of something in my chest. Maybe the big surprise my mother mentioned was for me too. Maybe they had gotten me something special this time. I fell asleep with that small, foolish hope warming me from the inside. Christmas morning arrived with bright winter sunlight streaming through the guest room window. I could hear movement downstairs, voices calling out the sounds of a family waking up to celebrate. I got dressed quickly, pulling on the new sweater I had bought specifically for today. It was red and festive, and I wanted to look like I belonged in the family photos. When I came downstairs, everyone was already gathered in the living room around the Christmas tree. The pile of presents underneath was enormous, wrapped in matching paper, with elaborate bows. Preston was there too, sitting on the couch next to Haley with his arm draped over her shoulders. My mother was already holding her phone ready to take pictures. We started with the smaller gifts. I watched as my parents opened the presents I had given them. My father unwrapped the silk tie, glanced at it, and said, "Oh, thanks, Clarabelle," before setting it aside on the couch cushion. He didn't try it on. He didn't hold it up to admire it. He just set it down and reached for another gift. My mother opened her perfume set and smiled politely. "That's sweet honey," she said, but there was no real enthusiasm in her voice. She placed it on the side table and moved on. Haley opened my gift next. She pulled out the designer handbag and examined it for a moment. "It's nice," she said slowly, "but I actually just bought something really similar last month. Maybe you can return it and get your money back." She set it aside without a second glance. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my smile fixed in place. Then it was Haley's turn to receive gifts from our parents. The first box contained a jewelry set from Tiffany, a diamond necklace and matching earrings that sparkled even in the soft morning light. Haley gasped and immediately put them on, admiring herself in the mirror above the fireplace. My mother beamed. "They look absolutely stunning on you, sweetheart." The next gift was an envelope. Haley opened it and pulled out printed documents. Her eyes went wide. "Paris. You're sending me to Paris." My father grinned. 2 weeks first-class flights, 5-star hotel. You've been working so hard you deserve a real vacation. Haley threw her arms around both our parents, squealing with delight. I did the math in my head. A trip like that had to cost at least $15,000, probably more. But then my father stood up, jingling a set of keys in his hand. "And now," he said, his voice full of excitement, "for the big one. Haley, why don't you step outside for a moment?" We all filed out onto the front porch. The morning air was cold and sharp, and I wrapped my arms around myself. Parked in the driveway with a huge red bow on top was a brand new BMW 3 Series. It was pearl white and gleaming in the sunlight, absolutely pristine. Haley screamed. Actually screamed. She ran down the steps and circled the car, running her hands over the hood, peering in the windows. "Is this really mine? Is this really for me?" My father handed her the keys. "All yours, sweetheart. You've earned it." She burst into tears and hugged our parents so tightly they all nearly fell over. Preston was taking pictures congratulating her, talking about how great she was going to look driving it. I stood on the porch frozen. My feet felt like they were bolted to the wood. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only watch as my sister celebrated receiving a car that probably cost $40,000. A car, a trip to Paris, and diamond jewelry. All for Haley. After what felt like an eternity, my mother turned to me. For a moment, I thought maybe she had forgotten about me entirely. But then she smiled and said, "Clarabelle, sweetie, we have something for you, too." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. She walked over and placed it in my hands. The envelope was thin, light. There was no weight to it at all. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a single bill, a $2 bill. That was it. No card, no note, no explanation. Just one $2 bill. I stared at it. I turned it over as if maybe there was something written on the back, some message I was missing. But there was nothing. Just a $2 bill that someone had probably gotten as a novelty and decided to pass along to me. Haley walked back up to the porch, still clutching her car keys, and glanced at what I was holding. She actually laughed. "Well, that's practical," she said. "You can buy yourself a coffee." My father cleared his throat. We thought you would appreciate something symbolic, Clarabelle. $2 bills are rare. They're collector's items. It shows we put thought into it. My mother nodded. Besides, you're always saying how independent you are and how you don't need material things. We thought you'd prefer something simple. I couldn't find words. My throat had closed up entirely. Preston leaned over to Haley and whispered, but I heard him anyway. That's brutal even for them. Haley whispered back. She's used to it. We went back inside. Everyone else was energized and happy, chattering about the car and the trip and the jewelry. I sat on the couch holding my $2 bill, feeling like I was watching the scene through thick glass. None of it seemed real. This couldn't be real. Lunch was more of the same. Haley dominated the conversation, talking about where she would drive first, what she would pack for Paris, how the diamonds looked with different outfits. My parents hung on her every word. Preston chimed in with compliments and suggestions. I sat at the end of the table silent, pushing food around my plate. No one asked me if I was okay. No one asked me anything at all. That afternoon, I excused myself and went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and looked at the $2 bill in my hand. 28 years. 28 years of trying to be good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. 28 years of working harder than my sister ever did, of being more responsible, of never asking for anything extravagant. And this was what I was worth to them. $2. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even hurt. It was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was an afterthought. A box to check. The disappointing child they kept around out of obligation but didn't actually value. And I was done. I stayed in that room for a long time thinking. The sounds of celebration continued downstairs. At one point, I heard Haley's laughter echoing up through the house, bright and careless. The kind of laughter that comes from someone who has never had to question whether they are loved. By the time evening came and we sat down for Christmas dinner, I had made my decision. I was calm, eerily calm. I participated in the meal, smiled when appropriate, answered questions with short, polite responses. If anyone noticed that something had changed, they didn't mention it. But then again, they never really looked at me closely enough to notice anything. After dinner, I helped clear the table while Haley and Preston relaxed in the living room. My mother thanked me absently already, turning back to ask Haley about her plans for New Year's Eve. I went upstairs around 9 o'clock, telling everyone I was tired from the drive and wanted to get some sleep. No one tried to convince me to stay up. No one seemed to care. In the guest room, I closed the door quietly and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called Jasmine, my best friend from college, who had moved to Portland, Oregon 2 years ago. She answered on the second ring. "Merry Christmas, Claire," she said warmly. "Jazz," I said, and my voice came out rougher than I expected. "I need to tell you something." I told her everything. The BMW, the Paris trip, the diamonds, the $2. I told her about Preston's comment and Haley's laughter, and my parents' complete indifference to how any of this might make me feel. I told her I couldn't do it anymore, that I was done trying to earn love from people who would never give it. Jasmine was silent for a moment after I finished. Then she said, "Come to Portland." "What?" "Come here. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever. I have a spare bedroom, and you can stay as long as you need. Get out of there, Claire. You deserve so much better than this." Something loosened in my chest. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Pack your stuff and drive. I'll be waiting." We talked for a few more minutes, working out the logistics. After we hung up, I sat there holding my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope that my family would change, but hope that I could change, that I could choose something different. I stood up and started moving. I pulled my suitcase out from under the bed and began packing systematically. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop chargers, important documents. I moved through the room like a ghost, silent and efficient. I took everything that belonged to me. The few items I had left in this house over the years, I gathered them up. Old photographs from my childhood, my high school yearbook, a stuffed animal I had kept since I was 5. Anything that was mine, I packed. I checked my bank account on my phone. After buying Christmas gifts, I had about $4,000 left in savings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. I could make it work. I had always made things work. Then I picked up the $2 bill from where I had left it on the nightstand. I stared at it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to leave it behind to throw it away, to reject it the way they had rejected me. But something stopped me. This bill was proof. Proof of what they thought of me, proof of why I was leaving. I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet. I pulled out a small notepad from my purse and wrote a single sentence. I'm worth more than $2. Don't look for me. I placed the note on the pillow where they would find it in the morning. It was after midnight now. The house had gone quiet. I could hear my father snoring through the wall. I sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, my suitcase and backpack ready by the door, and watched the clock. I wanted to make sure they were deeply asleep before I left. I couldn't risk anyone waking up and trying to stop me. Not that they would try very hard, but I didn't want the confrontation. I didn't want to give them the chance to make me feel guilty or to convince me I was overreacting. At 1:45 in the morning, I stood up. I picked up my bags and opened the bedroom door as slowly as possible, cringing at every tiny creak. The hallway was dark. I could still hear my father snoring from my parents' bedroom. No other sounds. I crept down the hallway, taking each step carefully, keeping close to the wall where the floorboards were less likely to groan. The stairs were the hardest part. Every single step seemed to make noise, and I froze multiple times, certain someone would wake up. But no one did. Finally, I reached the bottom and crossed the living room. The Christmas tree lights were still on, casting colored shadows across the presents scattered under the branches. Haley's designer gifts were piled neatly in one corner. My silk tie and perfume set had been shoved to the side, already forgotten. At exactly 2 in the morning, I reached the front door. I turned the lock as quietly as I could and pulled the door open. The cold December air hit my face. I stepped out onto the porch, set my bags down for just a moment, and pulled out the house key from my keychain. I placed it carefully on the porch railing where they would find it. I wouldn't be coming back. I didn't need a key to a place that had never felt like home. I picked up my bags and walked to my car. My old Honda Civic looked shabby, parked next to Haley's gleaming new BMW, but it was mine. I had bought it myself with money I had earned. I put my bags in the back seat as quietly as possible and climbed into the driver's seat. My heart was pounding now, adrenaline rushing through my veins. I put the key in the ignition and turned it slowly. The engine started with a low rumble. I didn't turn on the headlights yet. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway, using only the pale moonlight to guide me. Once I reached the street, I shifted into drive and pulled away. Only when I was 2 blocks away did I turn on my headlights. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The house was dark and still completely unaware that I was gone. And I would never be back. I drove through the night with the windows cracked, letting the cold air keep me alert. The roads were empty at this hour, just me and the occasional truck. I had MapQuest directions printed out that would take me across the country to Portland. It was roughly 3,000 miles a journey that would take at least 4 or 5 days if I pushed myself. I stopped at a 24-hour gas station around 4 in the morning, just across the state line into New York. While I filled the tank, I pulled out my phone. I had 17 missed calls, 12 from my mother, 3 from my father, 2 from Haley. I turned off the phone completely and removed the SIM card, dropping it into a trash can next to the gas pump. I would buy a new one later, a new number they couldn't trace. Before leaving the gas station, I went inside and bought a new SIM card from the small selection they had near the register. I activated it in the parking lot and texted Jasmine my new number. Then I systematically blocked every number associated with my family in my new phone. My parents, Haley, even distant relatives, anyone who might try to contact me on their behalf. I wanted a clean break, total silence. Next, I opened every social media app I had: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I didn't just log out. I deleted the accounts entirely. Years of photos, posts, connections, all gone in a matter of minutes. Then I created new accounts using my middle name, Marie, instead of Clarabelle. Just Marie with a new email address, no last name, no identifying information. I didn't add anyone from my old life. These accounts would be for the new me, whoever she turned out to be. I got back in the car and kept driving west. The sun rose somewhere in Pennsylvania, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I had been driving for hours, and exhaustion was starting to creep in around the edges, but I couldn't stop yet. I needed to put as much distance as possible between myself and Connecticut. Around noon, I stopped at a small diner off the highway. I sat in a corner booth and ordered coffee and eggs, even though I wasn't hungry. The waitress was an older woman with kind eyes who called me honey and didn't ask questions. I wondered if she could tell I was running away. Maybe she had been there once too. I pulled out my phone and looked at the blocked calls I had received before switching SIM cards. My voicemail had filled up, but I couldn't access it with the new SIM. Part of me was curious about what they had said, what excuses they had made, whether they had even noticed I was gone before finding the note. But I forced myself to look away. It didn't matter. Nothing they said could change anything. I spent that first night in a cheap motel outside Cleveland, Ohio. The room smelled like cigarettes and the heater clanked, but I didn't care. I took a hot shower, fell into bed, and slept for 10 hours straight. I didn't dream. The next day I drove through Indiana and Illinois. The landscape flattened out endless fields covered in snow stretching to the horizon. I listened to the radio switching between stations as they faded in and out, avoiding anything that played Christmas music. I stopped when I needed gas or food or rest, but I never stayed anywhere long. By the third day, I had crossed into Wyoming. The terrain changed again, becoming dramatic and mountainous. I felt like I was driving towards something instead of just away. For the first time since leaving, I let myself think about the future instead of the past. Portland, a new city where no one knew me, where I could be anyone I wanted to be. On the fourth day, I crossed into Oregon. The landscape turned green again, tall pine trees lining the highways. It rained steadily, the kind of soft, persistent rain that would have made me miserable back east, but somehow felt cleansing here. I arrived in Portland late in the afternoon on December 28th. Jasmine's apartment was in a neighborhood full of old houses converted into multi-unit buildings with coffee shops and bookstores on every corner. I parked on the street and sat in my car for a moment, suddenly nervous. This was real. I had actually done it. I had left everything behind and driven across the country to start over. I texted Jasmine that I was outside. Within seconds, the front door burst open, and she came running down the steps. She pulled open my car door and yanked me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "You made it," she said into my hair. "You actually made it." "I made it," I repeated, and started to cry. We stood there on the sidewalk in the rain, while I sobbed out all the fear and pain and anger I had been holding in for 4 days. Jasmine just held me and let me cry. Finally, when I had no tears left, she pulled back and looked at me seriously. "You're safe now," she said. "You're going to be okay. I promise." She helped me carry my bags upstairs to her apartment. It was small but cozy, with plants in every window and art on the walls. She showed me to the spare bedroom, which she had already prepared with fresh sheets and a vase of flowers on the dresser. "Take all the time you need," she said. "Stay as long as you want. We'll figure everything else out together." That first week, I barely left the apartment. I slept a lot, trying to recover from the emotional exhaustion of the past few months. Jasmine respected my space, but made sure I ate and occasionally convinced me to watch a movie with her. She never pushed me to talk about what happened, but she was always there when I needed her. On New Year's Eve, we stayed in and drank cheap wine on her couch. When midnight came, she raised her glass and said, "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed and meant it. January arrived with cold rain and gray skies, but I didn't let it slow me down. On January 5th, I started looking for work. Portland's job market was competitive, and without local connections, I knew it would be difficult. But I had to start somewhere. I updated my resume and started applying to every marketing position I could find, from entry-level to senior roles. I spent hours each day on job boards, carefully crafting cover letters, following up on applications. The first few weeks, I heard nothing back. Not even rejections, just silence. To make ends meet, I took a part-time job at a coffee shop called Brew Haven in Jasmine's neighborhood. It wasn't glamorous work. I woke up at 5 in the morning to open the shop, made lattes and cappuccinos for the morning rush, cleaned counters, and restocked supplies. My feet ached by the end of each shift, and I smelled like espresso constantly. But it was honest work, and the tips helped stretch my savings. The regular customers started to recognize me. There was Harold, an elderly man who came in every morning for black coffee and a blueberry muffin. There was Sarah, a young mom with twins, who ordered the most complicated drink I had ever heard of. There was Marcus, a grad student who camped out at a corner table for hours working on his dissertation. They didn't know anything about my past, about my family, about Connecticut. To them, I was just Marie, the friendly barista who remembered their orders. Finally, at the end of January, I got a response. A small marketing firm called Cascade Creative wanted to interview me for a junior marketing coordinator position. The pay was less than what I had been making in Boston, but I didn't care. It was a start. The interview went well. The owner, a woman named Linda, seemed impressed with my experience and my portfolio. 3 days later, she called to offer me the job. I started the following Monday. Cascade Creative was nothing like my old firm in Boston. We worked out of a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and big windows. There were only 8 employees, and everyone wore jeans and sneakers. The work was fast-paced and creative. We handled marketing for local businesses, mostly restaurants, boutiques, and startups. I was given real responsibility right away, managing social media accounts, creating content strategies, designing promotional materials. I worked harder than I had ever worked in my life. I stayed late, volunteered for extra projects, taught myself new skills on nights and weekends. I watched YouTube tutorials on graphic design, took free online courses in digital marketing, read every industry blog I could find. I was determined to prove myself, to show that I could build something real from nothing. Linda noticed. 3 months after I started, she pulled me into her office and told me she was promoting me to marketing specialist and giving me a raise. 6 months after that, I was promoted again to senior specialist. The junior coordinator started coming to me with questions. I was becoming good at this, really good. During this time, I slowly started building a life in Portland. Jasmine introduced me to her friend group, and I started going out occasionally, grabbing dinner, seeing movies, exploring the city. I took up running and discovered I actually enjoyed it. Every morning before work, I would run through the tree-lined streets of my neighborhood, clearing my mind and building my strength. I rented a small studio apartment in Southeast Portland after 6 months of staying with Jasmine. It was tiny, just one room with a kitchenette and a bathroom. But it was mine. I furnished it with secondhand finds from thrift stores and yard sales. Every piece had a story, and I had chosen each one myself. No one had told me what I should like or what would be appropriate. It was entirely, completely mine. About a year after leaving Connecticut, something unexpected happened at work. We had been pitching for a major account, a tech startup that needed a complete rebrand. I had worked on the presentation for weeks, pouring everything I knew into the strategy. When we presented to the client, I was the one who delivered most of the pitch. Afterwards, the client's CEO shook my hand and said, "You just earned us our business. That was brilliant." We got the account. It was the biggest deal Cascade Creative had ever landed. Linda took the whole team out to celebrate, and at dinner, she announced that she was promoting me to senior marketing specialist and doubling my salary. I was making more money than I ever had in Boston, but more importantly, I was happy. Not the desperate, anxious happiness of trying to please people who would never be pleased, but real contentment. I liked my work. I liked my coworkers. I liked my little apartment and my morning runs and my Friday night dinners with Jasmine. I had built a life, and it was good. Around this time, I met Raymond Fletcher. He was the new director of marketing at a larger firm called Northwest Digital that had reached out about a senior position. During my interview with him, he asked me questions that made me really think about strategy and creativity and leadership. He didn't just want someone who could execute tasks. He wanted someone who could think 3 steps ahead. He offered me the job on the spot. The salary was nearly double what I was making at Cascade Creative. I almost cried when he told me the number. Linda was sad to see me go, but understood. She told me she had been expecting someone to poach me eventually. At Northwest Digital, I thrived. Raymond became more than just a boss. He was a mentor who saw potential in me that I was only beginning to see in myself. He taught me about business strategy, about leading teams, about thinking like an executive, rather than just a skilled worker. He pushed me to speak up in meetings, to trust my instincts, to stop apologizing for taking up space. Under his guidance, I grew rapidly. A year after joining Northwest Digital, I was promoted to marketing manager. A year after that, I became senior marketing manager. The money was good, better than I had ever imagined possible. I bought a real apartment, a one-bedroom with hardwood floors and big windows that let in the morning light. I paid off my student loans completely. I started a savings account that actually grew instead of constantly being depleted. But the best part wasn't the money or the title, it was the respect. My colleagues listened when I spoke. My ideas were valued. When I succeeded, people celebrated with me. When I struggled, people supported me. I had finally found a place where my worth wasn't measured by how well I compared to someone else, or how much I was willing to shrink myself. I was valued for exactly who I was. 3 years after leaving Connecticut, I was named Senior Marketing Director. I had an office with my name on the door, a team of 15 people reporting to me, and a salary in the low six figures. I spoke at marketing conferences, wrote articles for industry publications, and built a professional reputation that had nothing to do with my family name or connections. It was all mine. And through it all, I kept that $2 bill in my wallet. Sometimes I would take it out and look at it, remembering the person I had been that Christmas morning. Remembering how small I had felt, how worthless. The bill was a reminder of how far I had come, of what I had built from nothing. They had meant it as an insult, as a dismissal, but I had turned it into fuel. It was a Tuesday afternoon in November, 3 years and 11 months after I had left, when my past finally caught up with me. I was in my office reviewing a campaign proposal when my assistant buzzed my desk. "Marie, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." I frowned. Did she give a name? There was a pause. "She said her name is Haley." My stomach dropped. I sat frozen for a moment, my mind racing. How had she found me? I had been so careful. New name, new city, new number. I had vanished completely. "Marie." My assistant's voice came through the intercom again. "Should I tell her you're busy?" "I'll come down," I said. I took the elevator to the lobby, my heart pounding. When the doors opened, I saw her immediately. Haley stood near the windows looking out at the street. She had changed. She was thinner than I remembered, her clothes were less expensive, and there was something tired about her posture. When she turned and saw me, her eyes widened. "Clarabelle," she breathed. "It's Marie now," I said calmly. "How did you find me?" "Private investigator. It took months and cost more than I want to think about." She took a step toward me. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks. Why haven't you responded to our emails?" "Because I don't want to be reached," I said simply. "Clarabelle, please. I know you're angry, but this is serious. We need your help." I crossed my arms. "What kind of help?" Haley glanced around the lobby nervously. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Against my better judgment, I led her to a small conference room off the lobby. We sat across from each other at the table, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Up close, I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the way her expensive handbag was worn at the corners. "Dad made some bad investments," Haley finally said. "Really bad ones. He lost almost everything in a tech startup that went under. Mom had to close her practice after a malpractice lawsuit. Even though she won, the legal fees bankrupted her. And She trailed off. "And you what?" I asked. "Preston left me. Turned out he was cheating the whole time. I caught him, filed for divorce, and then somehow I ended up being the one who looked bad at work. They forced me out during the restructuring. I've been working retail for the past year." She looked down at her hands. "We had to sell the house. The BMW is gone. Everything is gone. We're about to lose the apartment they're renting now." "And you want money?" I said flatly. "Dad heard from someone that you were doing well out here, that you had some big job at a marketing company. We just need enough to get back on our feet. Maybe 20 or 30,000 to cover a few months of rent and expenses until Dad can find something stable." I stared at her for a long moment. Part of me felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy once, but mostly I felt nothing. These were strangers to me now. Their problems weren't mine. "No," I said. "What?" I opened my wallet and pulled out the $2 bill. It was creased and worn now from 3 years in my wallet, but still intact. I placed it on the table between us. "This is what you're getting from me. The exact same thing you gave me that Christmas morning." Haley stared at the bill, then back at me. "You kept it as a reminder of what I was worth to you, of why I left. of why I will never come back. Clarabelle, please. We were wrong. We see that now. We took you for granted. We're sorry. I stood up. You didn't take me for granted, Haley. To take someone for granted, you have to value them in the first place. You never valued me. You never saw me. I was just the disappointing daughter, the one who wasn't as pretty or charming or worthy of investment. And when you finally had to acknowledge my existence on Christmas morning, you gave me $2 while she got a car worth $40,000. We didn't know you would leave, she said weakly. Of course you didn't, because you never paid enough attention to know how much you were hurting me. I picked up the $2 bill and put it back in my wallet. You know what the real gift was that Christmas? It wasn't the bill. It was clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw exactly how little I meant to you. And it freed me. It freed me to leave, to start over, to build something real. So that's it. Haley stood up too, her voice rising. You're just gonna let us lose everything. You're not losing everything, Haley. You're losing money and status and material things. I lost my family. Or rather, I realized I never had one to begin with. There's a difference. Mom and Dad are going to end up on the street. They're adults. They made their choices. They prioritized you over me for 28 years. They spent money on you that they could have divided fairly. They gave you every advantage while I had to fight for scraps. And now that their golden child hasn't panned out the way they hoped, they want to come running to the daughter they discarded. I shook my head. That's not how this works. You're being cruel. No, Haley, I'm being fair. For the first time in my life, I'm treating them exactly the way they treated me, with indifference. I walked to the door and opened it. You should leave now. Please, she said, and her voice cracked. Please, Clarabelle, we need you. I turned back one last time. 3 years ago, I needed you too. All of you. I needed a family who saw me, who valued me, who loved me just as much as they loved you. But you couldn't give me that. So don't come here asking me for something you were never willing to give. I held the door open wider. Goodbye, Haley. She stood there for another moment, tears running down her face, before finally walking past me into the lobby. I watched her cross to the elevators and disappear inside. The doors closed, and she was gone. I went back to my office and sat at my desk. My hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but I felt clear, lighter. That afternoon, I blocked the email addresses they had used to contact me. I didn't want to hear from them again. This chapter was closed. That evening, I met Jasmine for dinner at our favorite Thai restaurant. I told her what had happened. How do you feel? She asked carefully. Free? I said. For the first time, completely free. 6 months passed. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my family had moved to a small apartment in a less expensive area. My father had found work at a smaller law firm. My mother was working part-time at someone else's dental practice. Haley was still working retail. They weren't homeless or destitute, but they had been forced to live the way most people lived, without excess, without luxury, without someone else paying their way. I didn't feel triumphant hearing this news. I didn't feel vindicated or satisfied. I just felt distant from it, like hearing about something that had happened to people I used to know a long time ago. My own life continued to grow. I was promoted again to Vice President of Marketing, overseeing the entire marketing department for Northwest Digital. The company was expanding, opening offices in Seattle and San Francisco, and I was being considered for a regional director position that would make me responsible for marketing across the entire West Coast. I had also started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped young women from disadvantaged backgrounds develop professional skills. I mentored 3 women in their 20s who reminded me of myself at that age, hungry for opportunity, but without the connections or resources to break into competitive fields. I taught them what Raymond had taught me, what I had learned the hard way, that your worth isn't determined by where you come from or who your family is, that you can build something from nothing if you're willing to work for it. I started dating someone too. His name was Nathan, and he taught high school English. We met when I volunteered to talk to his students about career planning. He was kind and thoughtful with a dry sense of humor that made me laugh. He had grown up in foster care and put himself through college working 3 jobs. He understood what it meant to build yourself up from nothing. With him, I never had to explain why I didn't talk to my family. He got it. On a Saturday morning in late spring, Nathan and I volunteered together at a community center in a lower-income neighborhood. We were running a workshop on resume writing and interview skills for teenagers. Watching those kids, seeing them light up when they realized they had value and potential, reminded me why I had left in the first place. Not just to escape my family, but to become someone who could help others escape too. That afternoon, back at my apartment, I took the $2 bill out of my wallet one more time. I looked at it, this piece of paper that had once represented my deepest pain and humiliation. But now when I looked at it, I saw something different. I saw the catalyst, the breaking point that had forced me to save myself. I thought about framing it, hanging it somewhere as a reminder. But that felt wrong somehow, like I was still tethered to that moment, still defining myself by what had been done to me. So instead, I did something else. I went to my desk and pulled out a nice card. On the inside, I wrote, "To whoever needs this, you are worth more than anyone else's opinion of you. You are worth more than their neglect, their cruelty, their indifference. You are worth the life you dream of. Don't wait for permission to claim it." I put the $2 bill inside the card, sealed it in an envelope, and wrote on the outside, "For someone who needs to hear this." The next day, I left it at the community center with a note for the staff to give it to a young person who seemed to be struggling. Letting go of that bill felt like letting go of the last piece of anger I had been carrying. I didn't need it anymore. I had proven to myself everything I needed to prove. 3.5 years after leaving Connecticut, I was offered the regional marketing director position. I accepted. The salary was more than I had ever imagined earning. I bought a small house in a quiet Portland neighborhood with a garden where I planted vegetables and flowers. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a mixed breed named Luna, who followed me everywhere. I hosted dinner parties for my friends. I took vacations to places I had always wanted to see. I built a life that was full and rich and entirely my own. Sometimes late at night, I would wonder if my family ever thought about me, if they ever regretted how they treated me, if they ever realized that their obsession with money and status and appearances had cost them their daughter. But those thoughts came less and less frequently as time went on, because I had learned something important. I couldn't control what they felt or thought or understood. I could only control my own life, my own choices, my own worth. And I had chosen to be worth more than $2. I had chosen to be worth everything. One evening, almost 4 years to the day after I left Nathan, and I sat on my back porch watching the sunset. Luna was sprawled at our feet, and the garden was blooming with summer flowers. He reached over and took my hand. "You know what I love about you," he said. "What, you built yourself from scratch. No shortcuts, no handouts, no excuses, just pure determination and heart." I smiled. I had help. People like Jasmine and Raymond who believed in me. "But you had to believe in yourself first. That's the hardest part." He was right. That Christmas morning, holding that $2 bill, I had made a choice. Not just to leave, but to believe that I deserved better, that I was worth more. And once I made that choice, everything else followed. So here I am now, 4 years later, telling you this story. I'm 32 years old, successful in my career, surrounded by people who love and respect me, living in a city I adore, with a partner who treats me as an equal. I have everything I never had growing up: validation, appreciation, genuine love. Do I ever regret leaving? Not for a second. Do I ever wonder what would have happened if I had stayed, if I had tried harder to make them see me sometimes? But then I remember that I tried for 28 years. I tried with every good grade, every achievement, every gift I saved up to buy every holiday I drove 3 hours to attend. I tried until I had nothing left to give. And they gave me $2. The truth is, some people will never see your worth. They're too caught up in their own narrow definitions of value to recognize what's right in front of them. You can't make them love you. You can't earn their respect if they've already decided you're not worthy of it. The only thing you can do is stop seeking their approval and start building a life that doesn't need it. Walking away isn't giving up. It's not cruel or heartless or ungrateful. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. It's saying, I matter, my feelings matter, my life matters. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. That $2 bill was supposed to be a message that I wasn't worth their time, effort, or money. But I turned it into a different kind of message. A message to myself that said I was worth fighting for, worth starting over for, worth building a whole new life for. They thought they were putting me in my place. Instead, they set me free. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the afterthought or the disappointment, or the one who tries so hard and never gets seen, I want you to know something. You are not the problem. Their inability to see your value doesn't diminish it. You are worth more than their neglect. You are worth more than their conditional love. You are worth more than whatever scraps they're willing to throw your way. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is pack your bags at 2 in the morning and choose yourself. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself? Have you ever been treated like you didn't matter by the people who were supposed to love you most? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's support each other. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel because I share stories of survival strength and starting over. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're worth more than they've been told. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the courage to write your own. You deserve a life where you're valued. Never forget that.